She called the cops and screamed, "Arrest him!" right on my front porch, like she owned the gate. The woman with the perfectly coiffed hair shoved a laminated paper under my door, the kind with gold letters you only see in pamphlets about neighborhoods that never smell like cow dung. Behind her, a tall man in a suit I'd never seen before clicked a plastic badge and smiled the smile of someone who thinks power is a costume. My little boy was on the porch steps, toy truck in hand, and my wife stood frozen by the screen door, her fingers white on the frame. I stayed calm, because calm costs less than a fight, but my chest was loud enough I could hear it over her voice. "You can't live here anymore," she said, like she was reading the rules of the country instead of a printed threat. "This is an HOA notice. You're in violation. Leave." Her accent cut the air, thin and sharp, like a blade someone had sharpened on entitlement. The man with the badge took 2 slow steps forward, his shoes making no sound on the gravel. He said, "We can enforce this," and a dozen cheap words that meant nothing but tried to sound official. I bent and picked my son's truck up and handed it back without looking away. "This is my land," I said. "You don't tell me how to live on my own land." She laughed, not a quick laugh, one of those long, show-off laughs that wants an audience. "We'll see about that," she said, then leaned close enough that I smelled perfume and money. That tiny lean changed the air. It was a declaration, not a question. Right then, the man with the badge reached into his jacket like he was pulling out authority itself. My wife moved toward me, jaw tight. My boy stepped up behind me, small and brave. The twist came like a whisper, an ordinary thing that suddenly felt dangerous. The man fumbled his radio, and it beeped in a language I recognized, a municipal channel code, the one they use in town, not in the county where our ranch sits. The woman's laminated notice had a logo I'd seen once at a civic meeting years ago, the logo of a private association that had no power past the gate they controlled in town. I named it out loud, because naming makes right. This isn't an HOA. This is harassment. They bristled like I slapped them. That's when she did the cruel thing. She bent and looked past me, toward the playset where my daughter was coloring under the porch roof. "If you don't move your car, we'll have it towed, and the kids will be asked to go with you," she said, with a smile like she delivered bad news as a gift. My wife's face went white, the kind of white that holds too many months of worry. The man with the badge straightened, ready, patient, like a coiled rope. I'd told myself for years I'd never shout, never make a scene, but my hands tightened on the railing. "You call the law on my family, you better hope you're ready for the real one." The man's smile flickered, the woman's eyes narrowed, and in that small pause, small to everyone else, huge to us, they realized they had misread us. They had no idea who they were poking at. My son's small hand slipped into mine. My wife's fingers found her phone, but she didn't call. She looked at me like I knew what to do. I did, but not yet. The morning sun found the man's fake badge and made it gleam. He lifted a hand toward it. My voice was low and steady when I said the line my son would repeat for years. "You don't get to pretend and scare my family." The man laughed once, and then he reached for something, too slow, too confident.
The sound of that click, metal against plastic, made my gut turn. My wife gasped, and I stepped forward before thinking. The man's hand was still halfway in his jacket, but his eyes said he wanted me to believe it was a gun. He raised his chin and barked, "Stay back, sir. You're interfering with an HOA enforcement operation." My patience broke right there. "There's no HOA out here," I said, stepping down the porch steps, the wood creaking under my boots, "and you're not law enforcement, so I'll give you 3 seconds to leave my property before this turns into something you can't lie your way out of." He smirked like he'd heard it before. "You think you're some kind of hero?" I didn't answer. Heroes talk too much. I just watched his hands because I'd been trained to years ago before I started building fences and raising cattle. I'd seen men bluff with fear, and I'd seen men bluff with power. This one was bluffing with both. Karen, the name fit her so perfectly I didn't even bother to ask, folded her arms. "You're making a big mistake, mister," she said. "We've already called backup. Real officers are on their way. You'll be in cuffs before lunch." My wife whispered, "Don't, please," but I only nodded once. "Good," I said, "because I'd like to meet them." For a few long seconds, it was quiet. The wind pushed through the oak trees, carrying that dry ranch dust. Then I saw two figures walking down the dirt road, dark uniforms, flashing lights behind them, red and blue bouncing off the fence posts. Karen's smirk grew wider. "Told you," she whispered. But something didn't sit right. Their patrol car had no county number, no department seal, just a magnetic sticker, crooked, like it had been printed at home. My wife saw it too. "Those aren't real cops," she breathed. My son clung to her leg, eyes wide. The two officers reached the gate. One called out, "Sir, step away from the property," in a voice too rehearsed. My stomach tightened. I knew that voice. I'd heard it before in a training video from years back, a clip used to show how scammers impersonate deputies to scare people off disputed land. They had no idea who I was. I stepped forward, raised my hands just enough to keep things calm. "You're trespassing," I said. "You don't have jurisdiction here." Karen shouted, "He's armed! He threatened us!" The fake cop's hand twitched toward his holster. My wife screamed. My boy cried. And that was the moment, split, sharp like lightning, when I realized I had no choice. The man drew first. Something black flashed in his hand, and before I even thought, before I even breathed, I moved. The report echoed through the valley, one deafening sound that made the crows scatter. Silence after that was worse than the noise. The man dropped, clutching his leg, screaming. The plastic badge fell and landed in the dirt. I hadn't aimed to kill, I just needed to stop him. Karen froze. Her fake authority melted right off her face. She stumbled backward, pointing at me. "You're finished," she said, her voice cracking. "You shot an officer." "No," I said, stepping closer. "I stopped a criminal." My wife was on the phone already, calling the real sheriff's office. Her voice was shaken but clear. "There's been a shooting. Fake officers, impersonators. Send real deputies now." Karen tried to run, but her car blocked her in. The fake badge glinted at her feet, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she looked small, real small. I stood there, heart pounding, gun low, waiting for the real sirens to cut through the hills. And when they did, she finally realized her little game had just ended on the wrong ranch.
When the real sirens finally echoed through the valley, I felt my knees go weak. Not from fear, just the weight of what almost happened. My wife had her arm around our son, whispering that everything was okay, though none of us fully believed it yet. The fake cop was still on the ground, groaning, clutching his leg. Karen kept pacing in circles, her phone pressed to her ear like she still thought someone powerful was going to answer her calls. Two county deputies stepped out of the real cruiser, hands steady on their holsters. One of them, Sheriff Daniels, I actually knew. We'd served together once, long before life slowed down into fences, horses, and sunsets. He saw the fake badge in the dirt, looked at me, and said quietly, "You did what you had to do." Karen rushed toward him, waving her arms. "Officer, arrest him! He shot one of yours!" Her voice cracked in a mix of panic and rage. Daniels didn't even look at her. He knelt beside the guy on the ground, picked up the badge, turned it over, and muttered, "This is from a Halloween store." Karen froze. That's not true. He said he was with the HOA security department." Daniel stood up slowly, looked at her the way a teacher looks at a kid who just ran out of excuses. "Ma'am, there's no HOA security department in this county, and no legal HOA past mile marker 27. He nodded toward the gate. "That's 20 miles back." Her face fell. She turned red, then pale. "But he said—" "Yeah, he said a lot," Daniels cut her off. "Problem is, impersonating an officer is a felony, so is trespassing with intent to intimidate." She tried one last trick. He pulled the trigger. He shot an unarmed man. Daniels looked at me, then back at her. We already checked the wound. Rubber casing. He fired a non-lethal round. You're lucky he showed restraint. Karen took a step back, like the ground itself had betrayed her. "You're all making a mistake," she whispered. My wife spoke up for the first time since it all started. Her voice wasn't shaking anymore. "No, you made one. You came to threaten a family on their own land." Daniels motioned to his partner. "Cuff 'em both." Karen screamed when the cuffs clicked. "You can't do this! I know people! I'll sue!" Daniel shook his head. "Ma'am, you've got the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As they loaded the two imposters into the back of the cruiser, the sun started to dip, throwing long orange lines across the dirt road. My son tugged my sleeve and asked, "Daddy, are the bad guys going to jail?" I knelt down and smiled, brushing the dust off his cheek. "Yeah, buddy, they are." Daniels came over, hand on my shoulder. "You always find trouble, don't you?" "I guess trouble finds me," I half smiled. He chuckled, then grew serious. "You know this could have gone bad, right?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's why I didn't aim higher." He nodded, respect in his eyes, and walked off to finish his report. My wife came closer, leaning against me. "You okay?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said, looking out at the fence line, the field, the sky turning pink. The wind carried her soft laugh, but under it, I felt something else. Something darker. Because as the patrol car drove away, I noticed Karen's phone had fallen in the dirt. The screen was still lit, and on it, a message blinked from someone saved as director. Phase 1 failed. Move to Plan B. Don't let him keep that land. My stomach dropped. Whatever this was, it wasn't over.
I stared at that glowing message, the words burning through the dust on the screen. My wife saw my face change and asked, "What is it?" I handed her the phone silently. She read the message once, then again slower. "Plan B?" she whispered. "What does that even mean?" Before I could answer, the phone buzzed again. Same contact. Another text came in. "If you're compromised, leave the area. The buyer is already waiting." The buyer. That one word made my chest tighten. I'd been getting letters for months, people offering to buy our land, no matter the price. I threw them away every time, thinking they were just real estate vultures. But this was different. Someone was trying to take it by force. Sheriff Daniels was still talking by the car when I called out, "Hey Dan, you need to see this." He walked over, wiping sweat from his neck. I showed him the screen. His jaw tightened. "Who's the director?" "No idea," I said, "but sounds like these two weren't acting alone." He took the phone, called his deputy over, and started tracing the number through dispatch. My wife stepped closer to me, her eyes scanning the tree line. "What if there are more of them?" I looked out past the fields where the sun was sinking behind the ridge. The silence out there didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like someone was watching. "Then they'll have to come through me," I said quietly. The sheriff's radio crackled. His deputy's voice came through. "That number is registered to a shell company, headquarters in Dallas. Property acquisition firm. They've been under investigation for illegal land seizures." Daniels frowned. "Well, looks like your HOA queen and her fake cop were part of something bigger." Before I could respond, my security system chimed from the porch, motion detected, at the east fence line. My wife's eyes went wide. "That's near the barn." I jogged to the monitor inside, heart pounding. The screen showed 2 trucks parked by the far gate, engines still running. 3 figures moved in the headlights, one with a flashlight, another carrying what looked like a crowbar. Daniels followed me in, hand on his gun.
You got cameras on that side? I've got them everywhere, I said. Switching feeds. The figures were cutting the fence. Daniels muttered a curse, grabbed his radio. Unit 3, back up at the Walker Ranch. Possible burglary in progress. But I already knew this wasn't just theft. It was Plan B. I stepped to the safe, punched in the code, and pulled out my old sidearm, the one I'd promised I'd never need again. My wife's voice trembled. You can't go out there alone. I looked at her, then at my kids standing at the hallway corner, eyes wide, scared but silent. I won't, I said softly, but if they think they can scare us off our land again, they picked the wrong family. Outside, the headlights cut through the dark. The trespassers were almost through the fence now. One shouted, "Cut the power and grab the files. Boss wants proof before sunrise." Daniels whispered, "Proof of what?" I chambered around and looked at him. Ownership. Then the lights flickered, and every sound in the valley went still, except for the crunch of boots on dirt coming closer to the house. Whatever this was, it was no longer about an HOA. It was war over land. And this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to knock. The first window rattled from a rock, then another. My wife pulled the kids back into the hallway, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "Stay low, don't move." The porch light flickered again, and I could see their shadows stretching across the yard, 3 men moving like they knew the place, like this wasn't their first time here. Sheriff Daniels crouched near the door, gun drawn. "They're organized," he muttered, "not random thieves." They came for the deed," I said quietly. "They think if they destroy the proof, they can claim the land." He gave me a quick glance. "You still got the original?" I nodded towards the old oak chest under the stairs. "Locked and sealed. My father signed it in '82. The crunch of gravel grew louder, then a voice shouted, "Walker, step out! We're here for what's ours!" Sheriff Daniels frowned. "Ours?" I stepped to the window, peeked through the blinds. One of the men was holding a file folder, the same logo I saw in Karen's notice earlier. He wasn't bluffing. They'd stolen records from the county office. "Looks like they've been planning this longer than we thought," I said. Then came the sound that made my blood run cold, a small whimper behind me. My son had dropped his toy truck, and it clattered against the tile. Outside, one of the men froze. "He's inside," he yelled. The next moment shattered everything. Gunfire erupted, wild, untrained. Bullets tore through the porch rail. My wife screamed, covering the kids. Daniels returned fire, glass exploding around him. "They're not backing down," he yelled. I pulled him towards the hallway. "We've got to move them to the cellar." He nodded, covering me as I led my family through the kitchen, down the narrow steps beneath the pantry. I handed her the flashlight. "Lock this from inside. Don't open it until you hear me." She grabbed my hand, eyes wet. "You please don't do something stupid." I gave her a half smile. Too late for that. When I came back up, Daniels was pinned behind the counter, exchanging shots through the doorway. "They're trying to flank the back," he said. I checked the side window. One of them was circling the barn. I recognized him. He'd been with the fake cops earlier, sitting in their car. "They brought more muscle," I muttered. Daniels was running out of ammo. "We need to hold them until backup arrives." "Not if they cut the signal first," I said, pointing to the blinking router light. "Dead. They jammed the signal." Daniels cursed under his breath. "All right, then we end this fast." I slipped out the back door, crouched low behind the tractor. The moonlight caught the edge of a crowbar as one man tried to pry open the barn. I whispered to myself, "That's far enough." He turned and froze when he saw me. "Drop it," I said. He raised his hand, smirking. "You won't shoot." I fired once, hit the metal post beside him. The echo bounced through the valley. "Try me," I said. He dropped the bar, started backing away. That's when I saw movement near the porch, another one, raising his weapon towards Daniel's position. I didn't think. I fired again. He went down, rolling in the dirt, screaming. Daniels ran out, grabbed my shoulder. "You hit?" "No," I said, breathing hard. "You?" He shook his head, "But we got one left." We turned toward the gate. The last man stood there, phone in hand, grinning. "Director's gonna love this. You just made yourself the headline of the week." Then he hit something on his screen, and the generator exploded. The blast threw us both to the ground. Smoke filled the air, fire lighting the yard like daylight. My ears rang, my vision blurred. Through the haze, I saw him running toward the road. Daniels groaned, trying to get up. "Get him!" But I was already moving, through the fire, through the pain. My land was burning, and I wasn't letting him take another inch of it.